we look at the Sphinx today that's hiding? This is what the ancient Egyptian in the late period thought the same. Then they came and they began to dig to find out what's hidden under the Sphinx.
For thousands of years, the mysterious Great Sphinx of Giza was watched silently over the pyramids of Giza. Many believe it hides secrets beneath the sand. But when famous Egyptian archaeologist Zahi Hawass began investigating what lay under the Sphinx, rumors of something strange began to spread. Some claimed a hidden chamber existed below the statue. Others whispered about a mysterious machine buried deep underground. Was it an ancient device, a misunderstood structure, or just a myth? The search beneath the Sphinx may reveal secrets that could rewrite history. So join us in this video as we unveil this discovery, the gatekeeper of Egypt's greatest secrets. For nearly 40 years, one man stood at the center of everything the world believed about ancient Egypt. His name was Zahi Hawass. To many people, he was not just an archaeologist. He was the final authority on the mysteries of the pyramids, the temples, and the massive stone guardian known as the Great Sphinx of Giza. Hawass held extraordinary power over Egypt's most famous historical sites across the Giza Plateau. If a documentary was filmed, if a discovery was announced, or if an excavation was allowed to begin, his voice was often the one the world heard. Because of this, millions of people listened closely to everything he said about Egypt's ancient past. To supporters, he was the guardian of Egypt's heritage. His mission was clear: protect the true achievements of the ancient Egyptians and defend the official historical story.
Stand in front of the Great Pyramid and think how it was built. You will never believe that human being built this pyramid at all.
Accepted by scholars. In his view, that story was already well understood. For many years, Hawass repeated the same explanation about the Sphinx. According to the traditional view, the enormous statue was closely associated with a pharaoh's monument, likely dating to the reign of Khafre thousands of years ago. The statue, carved directly from limestone bedrock, stood as a symbol of royal power and protection. Whenever alternative theories appeared, Hawass strongly rejected them. He often criticized claims that suggested hidden civilizations, lost technologies, or secret chambers beneath the Sphinx. To him, such ideas were nothing more than distractions that took credit away from the real accomplishments of the ancient Egyptians. For decades, his message never changed. The Sphinx was a monument tied to a royal tomb. Its history was understood. The case was closed. That was the story. And because Hawass was the most powerful voice in Egyptian archaeology, that story became the one the world accepted. It seemed as solid and unshakable as the limestone blocks rising from the desert sands of Giza. But near the end of his long career in charge, something unexpected happened. Away from the television cameras and the large crowds of reporters, Hawass once gave a quiet talk to a small and trusted group of people. It was not a press conference or a public lecture. There were no headlines the next day. Yet what he said in that room would quietly shake the foundations of everything people thought they knew. Instead of announcing a new tomb or a chamber filled with gold, Hawass spoke about something very different. He described a deep intellectual problem that had troubled him for many years. According to him, his biggest mistake was not about hiding a secret discovery from the public. It was something far more complicated. He explained that he had tried to describe a modern discovery using ideas and language that belonged to a much older way of thinking. In other words, the problem was not secrecy. The problem was understanding. What Hawass had encountered was so unusual that the traditional vocabulary of archaeology did not seem able to explain it properly. This was not the confession of a treasure hunter who had uncovered lost riches. Instead, it sounded like the confession of a scientist who had run into something that simply did not fit into the normal categories of ancient history. His words did not reveal a hidden doorway beneath the sand, but they did open something far bigger, a question that still lingers today. What exactly had been found beneath the Sphinx? What kind of discovery could be so strange that even experienced scientists struggled to describe it? To understand how this mystery began, we need to go back several decades, long before dramatic theories and internet debates. The story actually started quietly during the 1970s, when engineers became worried about a very practical issue. The Sphinx is incredibly old. After thousands of years exposed to wind, sand, and weather, there were concerns that parts of the giant stone body might be weakening or cracking. To study the rock hidden beneath the surface, engineers used a special method similar to a medical scan. By sending sound waves into the ground and measuring how they bounced back, they could create an image of what lay deep inside the limestone. It worked much like the way doctors use ultrasound to see inside the human body. The team expected the results to be simple. Beneath the Sphinx, they believed they would find solid limestone bedrock, the same natural stone that forms much of the surrounding plateau. But the machines told a different story. Instead of uniform rock, the scans showed interruptions, spaces where the sound waves behaved differently. These signals suggested the presence of hollow areas beneath the monument. Even more surprising, some of these empty spaces appeared to have straight sides and defined corners. Shapes like that are unusual in natural rock formations. Still, the discovery did not immediately cause alarm. After all, the Giza Plateau has long been known as a vast royal burial ground. The desert around the pyramids is filled with hidden shafts, forgotten tombs, and ancient tunnels that archaeologists continue to uncover even today. So the simplest explanation seemed obvious. These spaces were probably undiscovered tombs. Mystery solved. But years later, researchers returned with more advanced technology, machines capable of seeing beneath the sand with far greater precision. This time, they used a method known as ground-penetrating radar, a system designed to produce highly detailed maps of structures hidden underground. And the new images revealed something the earlier scans had completely missed. The empty spaces were not scattered randomly. They were arranged in a pattern with striking symmetry. One cavity on the north side of the Sphinx appeared to have a nearly identical counterpart on the south side. The shapes seemed to mirror each other with remarkable precision, almost as if they had been carefully planned. This discovery created a serious problem for the original explanation. Natural caves rarely form in perfect mirror patterns. Even ancient Egyptian tombs, though carefully designed, were not built with this kind of abstract geometric balance. Beneath a monument, the evidence suggested something far more puzzling. What engineers had once assumed were simple burial chambers were now part of a much larger mystery, one that did not match anything archaeologists had seen before. The question was no longer about a missing tomb. Now, the puzzle was something entirely different, something hidden beneath the Sphinx that seemed almost designed. But while this discovery was made, what story did the public still believe in? And how did everything finally come to light? Keep watching to find out. The public story and the secret investigation. While this confusing scientific evidence was slowly coming to light, Zahi Hawass continued to defend the traditional explanation in public. In his official role, he worked tirelessly to keep the accepted story of the Great Sphinx of Giza firmly in place. He appeared regularly on television programs, gave interviews to newspapers, and wrote articles for books and magazines. And in every one of these appearances, his message was clear and firm. He told the world that there were absolutely no secret chambers hidden beneath the Sphinx.
Looking at the treasury room, the burial chamber, the coffin that touched the objects, it's really something beautiful education.
According to him, the idea that a mysterious underground world existed below the monument was pure fantasy. He described such claims as the work of people who misunderstood or disrespected the real achievements of ancient Egyptian civilization. To the public, Hawas appeared as a strong wall defending established history. The official explanation, repeated again and again, was simple. The Sphinx was part of a royal complex connected to the pharaoh Khafra. It was a monument tied to a king's tomb, nothing more and nothing less. This was the story he shared with the world. And because he held enormous authority over archaeological work on the Giza Plateau, his voice carried tremendous influence. His words helped shape what people everywhere believed about the Sphinx. But away from the cameras and the headline, a very different story was unfolding. Behind the scenes, something far more intriguing was taking place, and Hawass himself was deeply involved in it. During a major project to repair and preserve the Sphinx in the late 1980s, he personally supervised a series of unusual drilling operations. These were not ordinary surface repairs. Engineers brought in specialized drilling equipment designed to reach deep into the ancient limestone. Using this machinery, the team drilled narrow holes into the stone and extracted long, thin cylinders of rock. This process is known as core drilling, a common scientific method used to study the structure of stone layers far below the surface. Officially, the purpose of this work was simple. Researchers said they needed to analyze the limestone to understand how the monument was weathering and slowly breaking down over time. But the locations chosen for these drilling operations tell a much more interesting story. The drilling points were not scattered randomly around the monument. Instead, they were placed very carefully at specific spots, exactly where earlier radar scans had indicated the presence of those strange symmetrical voids hidden underground. In other words, while Hawass publicly insisted that nothing existed beneath the Sphinx, the drilling project quietly targeted the very places where the mysterious spaces had been detected. This detail raises an obvious question. If there was truly nothing there, why drill precisely at those locations? The official report that followed the drilling operations was brief and uneventful. According to the published findings, the samples showed only normal layers of limestone, the same natural rock found throughout the Giza area. No chambers, no hidden structures, nothing unusual. At least, that was the official conclusion. But the drilling itself gave Hawass something extremely important, something no other researcher on Earth possessed. He now had physical samples taken directly from the edge of the underground anomalies. Small cylinders of stone, pulled from deep inside the monument, were collected from the exact places where the mysterious voids had appeared on radar scans. This meant that Hawass held a unique advantage. While other researchers could only look at radar images and scientific data, he was the only person with actual pieces of rock taken from the boundary of the unknown. And those small fragments of stone might have carried clues about what truly lay hidden beneath the silent guardian of Giza. While Hawass hid secrets, what did the Sphinx's stones reveal? Stay tuned to find out. Clues in the Stone, a mystery written on the Sphinx. While the strange signals beneath the ground were already raising difficult questions, another enormous puzzle had been sitting in plain sight for decades. It was carved directly into the surface of the Great Sphinx of Giza, visible to anyone who looked closely at its weathered stone. The official explanation, supported by Zahi Hawass and many other scholars, was simple. According to this view, the damage to the Sphinx's body was caused by thousands of years of desert wind and blowing sand. In a harsh environment like the Giza Plateau, that seemed like a reasonable explanation. Wind-driven sand is known to slowly grind down stone over long periods of time. For many years, this idea fit neatly with the accepted timeline of ancient Egyptian history. But when independent geologists, scientists who study the Earth through its rocks and landforms, examined the Sphinx more carefully, they noticed something that did not match the official story. Across the body of the monument and along the walls of the large trench surrounding it, they saw deep grooves cut into the limestone. These grooves ran vertically, stretching from the top of the stone surfaces down toward the ground. This pattern raised an immediate problem. Wind erosion usually creates very different marks. When wind-carrying sand moves across rock, it tends to carve horizontal waves and smooth curves into the surface. The constant sideways motion produces patterns that follow the direction of the wind. But the grooves on the Sphinx were not horizontal, they were vertical, and that detail matters. Geologists recognize these vertical channels as a classic sign of water erosion. Specifically, they looked like the kind of damage created when large amounts of rain fall on stone and flow downward again and again over very long periods of time. Such erosion is typically produced by heavy rainfall continuing for hundreds or even thousands of years. This observation created a serious contradiction. The region around Giza has been extremely dry for a very long time. In fact, climate studies show that northern Egypt has experienced desert conditions for roughly the last 5,000 years. Rain does fall there occasionally, but it is rare and usually light. There simply has not been enough rainfall during that period to carve such deep vertical marks into solid limestone. So how could the Sphinx show clear evidence of long-term water erosion? For that to be possible, the monument would need to have existed during a much earlier time in history, an era when the climate of Egypt was very different from today. Thousands of years ago, before the desert fully formed, parts of North Africa experienced far wetter conditions. During that ancient period, heavy seasonal rains could have flowed across the limestone surfaces and slowly carved the patterns we see today. If that interpretation is correct, it suggests something remarkable. It would mean the Sphinx might be significantly older than the traditional historical timeline suggests. While this geological debate continued, another curious detail began attracting attention. When researchers examined ancient texts and local legends connected to the Sphinx, they noticed that these stories described the monument in unusual ways. Many of them did not describe it as a tomb or as a simple statue guarding a burial complex linked to the pharaoh Khafra. Instead, some of the old descriptions used functional language. They spoke about the space beneath the monument as a regulating chamber or even the sleeping heart of the land. These strange phrases almost sounded as if the structure had once been part of a system with a purpose, rather than only a monument to a king. To some researchers, these words suggested an idea that felt almost impossible. What if the Sphinx had once been part of something more complex? Both the physical evidence in the stone and the old legends seem to hint at the same unsettling possibility that the Sphinx was older than believed and may have been built for a purpose that modern historians no longer understand. But the most intriguing piece of physical evidence came from something far less visible. Years earlier, during the quiet drilling operations supervised by Hawas, scientists had extracted long cylindrical cores of stone from deep beneath the monument. These rock samples were stored away for many years. Eventually, researchers were able to examine those same samples again, using far more advanced scientific equipment. This time, they could analyze the microscopic structure of the limestone in incredible detail. At first glance, the rock seemed completely ordinary. Like most limestone found in the region, it contained tiny crystals of a mineral known as quartz. Quartz is extremely common in many natural rocks, so its presence was not surprising. But when scientists looked more closely, they noticed something very strange. Inside natural stone, quartz crystals normally form in random directions. Each crystal grows independently, pointing in its own orientation without any organized pattern. However, the quartz crystals in the samples taken from beneath the Sphinx did not behave that way. Instead, many of them appeared to be aligned in the same direction. Almost all of the tiny crystals pointed along a single axis, as if some powerful invisible force had rotated them into place and locked them there. This kind of alignment is extremely unusual in nature. In modern laboratories, scientists can sometimes create a similar effect by exposing materials to strong directional energy. One example is intense high-frequency vibration, such as powerful sound waves that are far beyond the range of human hearing. Around the same time that researchers were studying these microscopic clues, other teams were returning to the Sphinx with improved radar equipment. These new instruments produced clearer underground maps than ever before. The updated scans confirmed the presence of symmetrical cavities beneath the monument, but they also revealed something even more surprising. The spaces appeared to be connected. Thin, dense pathways extended between them, linking one cavity to another. On the radar images, these narrow structures looked almost like wires connecting components in a complex electrical circuit. And the most shocking discovery was still to come. According to the data, these pathways did not simply stop beneath the Sphinx. Instead, they appeared to continue outward beneath the desert sands, stretching across the plateau in a straight direction toward the massive pyramids rising nearby, including the legendary Great Pyramid of Giza. At that moment, the mystery changed completely. Researchers were no longer looking at a single hidden chamber beneath one ancient statue. They were looking at the possibility of a vast underground network, an interconnected system linking some of the most famous monuments on Earth. And if those connections were real, the Sphinx might not simply be a statue guarding the pyramids. It might be part of a much larger structure, a structure whose true purpose remains one of the greatest unsolved puzzles of the ancient world. If the stones hide secrets, how old is the Sphinx really? Let's find out. The long history of the Great Sphinx. Most archaeological evidence suggests that the Great Sphinx of Giza was created sometime between 2600 and 2500 BC during the height of ancient Egypt's Old Kingdom. Many researchers believe it was built either for the pharaoh Khufu, who constructed the nearby Great Pyramid of Giza, or for his son Khafra, the ruler usually connected with the second pyramid at Giza. Unlike many ancient statues that were built from separate blocks, the Sphinx is a single massive monument carved directly from the natural bedrock of the Giza Plateau. The same limestone ridge that forms the Sphinx also served as the quarry where stone blocks were cut for the pyramids and other nearby monuments. Some scientists have proposed an interesting idea about how the monument may have taken shape. Egyptian geologist Farouk El-Baz suggested that the head of the Sphinx might have been carved first. According to his theory, the sculptors could have started with a natural formation known as a yardang, a ridge of rock shaped by strong desert winds. These natural formations can sometimes resemble animals, and El-Baz believed ancient workers may have taken advantage of one such shape. He also proposed that the trench, or enclosure, surrounding the Sphinx may have been dug later as workers removed stone to carve the full body of the statue. The limestone blocks cut from this area were then reused to build a temple standing directly in front of the monument. Interestingly, archaeological evidence shows that both the temple and the enclosure were never fully completed. Another curious detail is the surprising lack of cultural material from the Old Kingdom around the Sphinx complex. Archaeologists expected to find strong evidence of religious activity connected to the statue during the time it was built. However, that evidence is limited. Because of this, some scholars have wondered whether a full religious cult devoted to the Sphinx existed during its earliest years. In 1949, Egyptian archaeologist Selim Hassan carefully studied the site and made an important observation. Even though the monument is widely linked to the pharaoh Khafra, no surviving inscription from that time clearly states that he ordered the Sphinx to be built. Hassan wrote that the connection to Khafra seems logical, but it still relies mostly on indirect evidence rather than a clear, written record. Archaeology also suggests that parts of the surrounding complex may actually be older than the Sphinx itself. For example, the northern wall of the nearby Valley Temple associated with Khafra appears to have been modified in order to build the Sphinx temple later. The layout of the causeway linking Khafra's pyramid to his Valley Temple also seems to have existed before the Sphinx enclosure was created. Over time, the monument faced another challenge that has shaped its history for thousands of years: drifting desert sand. At some point during Egypt's first intermediate period of Egypt, the royal cemeteries at Giza were largely abandoned. Without constant maintenance, desert winds slowly buried the Sphinx in sand, until only its head remained visible above the surface. The first known attempt to uncover it took place around 1400 BC, during the reign of Thutmose IV. According to historical records, the young prince fell asleep beside the half-buried monument and had a dream in which the Sphinx promised him the throne if he cleared the sand away. After becoming pharaoh, Thutmose IV organized workers to excavate the statue's front paws. Between them, he placed a shrine containing the famous dream stele, which tells the story of that dream. Centuries later, during Egypt's New Kingdom of Egypt, the Sphinx became closely connected with the sun god Hor-Em-Akhet. A temple dedicated to this form of the god was built nearby by the pharaoh Amenhotep II, nearly 1,000 years after the monument itself had first been carved. By the time of the Roman Empire, the monuments of Giza had already become famous attractions for travelers. Visitors from across the empire came to see them, much like tourists do today. Several Roman emperors even ordered restoration work on the Sphinx. One such clearing project took place during the reign of Nero, supervised by the governor of Egypt, Tiberius Claudius Balbillus. Workers constructed a massive staircase more than 12 meters wide, leading down toward the statue's paws so visitors could approach the monument more easily. Later, Roman writers also described the statue in detail. The famous scholar Pliny the Elder even recorded that the face of the Sphinx was once painted red. Another inscription from the year 166 AD celebrates restoration work carried out on the retaining walls around the monument. The last Roman ruler known to have repaired the Sphinx was Septimius Severus, around the year 200 AD. But after the decline of Roman power in Egypt, the Sphinx slowly disappeared beneath the desert once again. In later centuries, travelers from many cultures created their own interpretations of the monument. Some ancient non-Egyptians believed the statue represented the god Hauran. Others linked it to the legendary figure Hermes Trismegistus. Medieval Arab historians also described the Sphinx in fascinating ways. The Egyptian writer al-Makrisi referred to it as a powerful talisman connected to the flooding of the Nile River. Another scholar, Muhammad al-Idrisi, wrote that people sometimes brought offerings to the monument in hopes of gaining government positions. European travelers who visited Egypt between the 16th and 19th centuries often described the Sphinx with a mixture of science, imagination, and myth. Some early observers even believed its face resembled that of a woman rather than a man. Artists such as Johannes Helffrich, George Sandys, and Johann Michael van Sleb produced drawings that looked very different from the monument we see today. Serious archaeological work finally began in the early modern period. In 1817, the Italian explorer Giovanni Battista Caviglia carried out one of the first systematic excavations of the site. His team succeeded in uncovering the chest of the Sphinx from the surrounding sand. Later excavations continued this effort. Among those involved in clearing the monument was Eugène Grébeau, who served as director of the Egyptian Antiquities Service and worked to remove the sand that had once again gathered around the ancient statue. Through centuries of burial, rediscovery, and restoration, the Sphinx has remained one of the most mysterious monuments ever created. And even after thousands of years, its silent stone face still watches over Giza, guarding secrets that may not yet be fully understood. With centuries of mystery, can scholars truly agree on its age? Find out more. Debating the age of the Sphinx. For more than a century, historians and archaeologists have argued over one major question. Exactly how old is the Great Sphinx of Giza? Even among experts, the answer has never been completely settled. Some of the earliest excavators had very different opinions about when the monument was built and which pharaoh might have ordered its construction. One interesting discovery was made in 1857 by Auguste Mariette, the founder of the Egyptian Museum. While working in the Giza area, Mariette uncovered an artifact known as the Inventory Stela. The inscription, which dates to Egypt's 26th dynasty, around 664 to 525 BC, tells a surprising story. According to the text, the pharaoh Khufu supposedly discovered the Sphinx already buried in sand and ordered repairs to be made. If this story were completely true, it would mean the Sphinx existed even before Khufu's time. However, most scholars believe this part of the inscription was not historically accurate. Archaeological evidence contradicts the claim. and many experts consider the text to be a later attempt by priests to give their nearby temple a much older and more impressive history. During ancient times, temples often competed for political influence and financial donations, and connecting a shrine to a legendary past could help increase its prestige. As research continued, new opinions about the monument's age began to appear. In 1883, the famous archaeologist Flinders Petrie studied the nearby Khafra Valley Temple and argued that it was not older than Egypt's 4th dynasty. His work suggested that the temple, and likely the Sphinx as well, was connected to the reign of Khafra. Another major voice in the debate was the French Egyptologist Gaston Maspero, who became the second director of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. After examining the famous Dream Stele in 1886, Maspero noticed the name of Khafre carved into the inscription. Because of this, he concluded that Khafre was responsible for clearing the monument of sand, meaning the Sphinx itself must have existed before his reign. Maspero even described the Sphinx as possibly the most ancient monument in Egypt. Other scholars offered different interpretations. The German archaeologist Ludwig Borchardt believed the statue might date to the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. He argued that some features of the Sphinx's design resembled statues from the 12th dynasty, particularly those associated with the pharaoh Amenemhat III. Similarly, British scholar E.A. Wallace Budge suggested that the monument likely existed even before Khafra ruled Egypt. In his writings, Budge proposed that the Sphinx might actually date back to the end of Egypt's earliest dynastic era. Later research by Egyptian archaeologist Selim Hassan offered another possibility. After studying the layout of the Giza monuments, Hassan concluded that the Sphinx was probably built after the completion of Khafra's pyramid complex. Even today, these debates continue. Although many scholars connect the Sphinx with Khafra and the 4th dynasty, the monument's true origins remain one of the most fascinating puzzles in the history of ancient Egypt. So, what do you think about what Zahi Hawass found? Let us know in the comments section below. Beneath the silent gaze of the Great Sphinx of Giza, a mystery challenges everything we thought we knew. The machine Zahi Hawass found under the Sphinx is more than a story. It's a question buried in stone. If this changed how you see ancient Egypt, like, subscribe, and join us for the next hidden revelation.